I was working reception at a boutique hotel in Copenhagen when an American businessman checked in on a Tuesday afternoon in August. He asked what time our conference room opened. I told him we didn't have one because most of our corporate clients were on vacation. He laughed. Then he realized I wasn't joking. He explained that he'd scheduled 7 business meetings that week with Danish companies. I asked if he'd confirmed them. He said, of course, he'd sent emails 2 weeks ago. I gently mentioned that August is when most Danes take their mandatory vacation time. His face went pale. He showed me his phone with all these automated out-of-office replies he'd apparently ignored because he assumed they were jokes. Every single one said something like, returning September 2nd. He asked me, dead serious, if there was a plague he didn't know about. This level of cultural analysis doesn't show up in your feed by accident. I track these real-world misunderstandings full-time, so you don't have to. If you value insight over outrage, you belong here. When I explained that Europeans actually use their vacation days, he said that sounded like communism. He spent 3 days in Copenhagen eating pastries alone, then flew home early. His company lost $4,000 rebooking flights. I once had a guest from Texas demand to speak to whoever's in charge of Denmark, because her tour guide was on vacation. Another time, an American couple reported a hotel in Rome to TripAdvisor for being suspiciously empty in August. The owners were at the beach, and that was just Tuesday. I was working as an immigration officer at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris when an American woman arrived with her teenage daughter for a college tour. She'd scheduled visits at 4 universities across France. It was August 15th. I could already see where this was going. She asked for directions to Sorbonne University. I mentioned that most universities shut down for August. She corrected me, saying she'd done her research, and European universities operated year-round because education was more advanced here. I showed her the university website on my computer where it clearly stated, closed for summer break, July 15th, September 1st. She squinted at it and said, this must be an error because she'd specifically chosen August to avoid crowds. When I explained that's exactly why everything was closed, she asked if I could call the admissions office to open it just for her daughter. I told her nobody would answer. She said she'd paid for international calling on her phone plan specifically for emergencies like this. This was her emergency. She'd spent $800 on flights. She demanded to know who decided that universities could just close. I explained it was standard across Europe. She said that in America, universities run all summer because education doesn't take vacations. She asked if there was an emergency university that stayed open for tourists. I suggested she email to reschedule for September. She asked why Europe didn't have backup universities. Most creators react to culture. I dissect it. This channel's for people who don't just laugh at the moment. They study the mindset behind it. If that's your wavelength, hit subscribe now before this kind of nuance disappears from your feed. Her daughter looked like she wanted to disappear. The woman spent 20 minutes trying to Google Paris University's Open August before finally accepting reality. She asked if French people just don't value education. I told her French people value vacations more. She said that explained a lot about the European economy. I was working at a car rental agency in Berlin when an American man wanted to rent a van to move office equipment. He mentioned he was relocating his startup's satellite office. I asked when. He said tomorrow, August 20th. I warned him that most moving companies and storage facilities would be closed. He said he'd already hired a company. I asked if he'd confirmed. He showed me an email from June where they'd said, "We'll be in touch." He insisted German companies were famous for efficiency and punctuality. I pulled up the moving company's website. Big banner, Betriebsferien, closed August 10:30. He stared at it and asked what Betriebsferien meant. I translated, company vacation. He said that was impossible because they'd signed a contract. I asked if the contract specified August. He admitted it didn't have a specific date, just late summer. He said in America, late summer definitely doesn't mean closed for 3 weeks. He called the moving company. Voicemail. He called 4 others. All closed. He asked if there was an emergency moving hotline. I told him Germans plan around August closures. He said this was a massive business failure and threatened to write about it on LinkedIn. He asked if I knew any movers who actually worked during business hours. I mentioned that vacation was legally protected in Germany. He said that sounded inefficient. He ended up moving everything himself with the rental van. It took him 4 days. He threw his back out on day 2. I was working as a manager at a software company in Stockholm when our new American project lead scheduled a major client presentation for August 12th. She'd been with us 2 weeks. I pulled her aside and mentioned that half our team would be on vacation. She said she'd sent a calendar invite, so they needed to decline if they couldn't make it. I explained that Swedes book summer vacations a year in advance. These weren't flexible. She said that in her previous job in California, vacation requests had to be approved by management and could be canceled for important meetings. I told her that in Sweden, vacation is a legal right and canceling it is nearly impossible. She said that seemed anti-productivity. She asked if Swedish employment law had an exception for urgent business needs. I said no. She asked if anyone had tried to change it. I said no, because Swedes like vacations. She insisted the presentation was critical and offered to pay bonuses if people canceled their vacations. I explained that Swedes value time off more than money. She said that didn't make economic sense. She proposed moving the presentation to video conference so people could join from their vacation spots. I mentioned that most Swedes completely disconnect during vacation. She asked if that was even legal in a professional setting. She seemed genuinely confused that people wouldn't check email for 4 weeks. The presentation got rescheduled to September. She asked if we could at least do a light planning meeting in August with whoever wasn't gone. 3 people showed up. She called it the saddest meeting of her career. I was working as a waiter at a cafe in Barcelona when an American woman tried to schedule a business lunch for August 25th. She wanted to reserve a table for 8. I told her we'd be closed. She asked for how long. I said 3 weeks. She asked why. I said vacation. She laughed and said, "No, really, why?" She explained she was meeting with Spanish suppliers and had specifically chosen August because it was cheaper to fly. I told her that's because everyone knows Spain shuts down in August. She said she'd researched best time to visit Spain for business, and several blogs said summer. I asked if those blogs were written by Europeans. She pulled up her phone. All American travel bloggers. She asked if Spain had a different August than America's August. She insisted her suppliers had confirmed the meeting. I asked when. She said 2 months ago. I suggested she check if they'd sent follow-up emails. She scrolled through her inbox and found 5 messages saying, "We'll be on holiday in August." She'd marked them as spam because she thought they were auto-replies. She asked if Spanish companies always went on vacation during business hours. I explained August was specifically not business hours in Spain. She said that seemed like poor planning for an economy. She asked if any restaurants were open. I recommended some tourist spots in Barcelona. She said she needed somewhere professional. I told her professional Spaniards were at the beach. She asked where Spanish people do business in August. I said September. She canceled the trip and rescheduled for October. She later emailed asking if October was also a vacation month. I told her no, but watch out for November 1st. I was working the front desk at a medical clinic in Amsterdam when an American patient called asking for an appointment with her neurologist. She'd been seeing him for 6 months. I checked the schedule. He was on vacation until September 5th. She asked who was covering for him. I said no one. She went silent for a moment. She explained this was unacceptable because she had a chronic condition requiring monthly check-ins. I sympathized, but explained that Dutch doctors take vacation like everyone else. She said that in America, medical practices always have coverage. I told her she could see a different neurologist if it was urgent. She said she specifically chose this doctor and didn't want to start over with someone new for one appointment. But she also couldn't believe a doctor would just leave for a month. She asked if Dutch medical boards allowed this. I confirmed it was completely normal. She said it seemed irresponsible. I mentioned that rested doctors make fewer mistakes. She said American doctors work through their problems. She asked if there was a complaint process. I told her she was welcome to file one, but the person handling complaints was also on vacation until September 9th. She asked if everyone in the Netherlands just agreed to abandon their jobs in August. I said yes, it's wonderful. She asked to speak to the office manager. I told her I was the office manager. She asked who my supervisor was. I said he was in Greece. She hung up and called back in September, then asked if the doctor seemed well-rested enough to see patients after a month off. I was working as a real estate agent in Lisbon when an American couple wanted to close on an apartment by August 30th. They'd found their dream place and were ready to sign. I explained that closing in August was nearly impossible because notaries, lawyers, and bank officers all took vacation. The husband said they'd pay extra for expedited service. I told them this wasn't about money. August closings simply don't happen. The wife said they'd already given notice at their American apartment, and their lease ended August 31st. I asked why they'd done that before securing the Portuguese property. She said because in America, real estate closings take 2 weeks maximum. The husband said they'd built in extra time by starting in mid-July. I explained that Portuguese bureaucracy normally takes months, and adding August made it impossible. They asked if we could call everyone involved and offer bonuses. I said their lawyer was in Algarve, their notary was in Porto, and their bank officer was in Brazil visiting family. None of them were checking work email. The husband said this was the most disorganized system he'd ever seen. The wife asked if Portugal had a functional government. I mentioned the government was also partially closed for August. They asked if they could break into their new apartment since they technically owned it. I explained they didn't own it until the papers were signed, which wouldn't happen until September. They lived in a hotel for 3 weeks. The husband kept saying this would never happen in America. The wife posted a 1-star review of Portugal on Google. Someone replied, "Should have closed in September." I was working as a tour guide in Vienna when an American executive booked a private walking tour for his company retreat. 20 employees. He'd scheduled it for August 18th. I confirmed the booking in June and reminded him twice that August was vacation season. He replied both times saying his team was used to working through summer. The day before the tour, he called asking for restaurant recommendations for a group dinner afterward. I listed 5 places. He called back an hour later, saying all 5 were closed. I reminded him about August closures. He said he thought I meant small shops, not real restaurants. I explained that Austrians take vacation very seriously, from cafe owners to CEOs. He asked if there was anywhere his team could eat. I suggested a few tourist-trap places near Stephansplatz that stay open for desperate visitors like him. He said those didn't look authentic on Google reviews. I told him authentic Austrians were in Croatia. The tour happened. Halfway through, someone asked where all the locals were. I explained they were on vacation. Another person asked if Vienna was always this empty. I said only in August, which is why I'd warned him 3 times. The executive asked why I didn't warn him harder. I showed him my emails with warnings in bold text. He said he thought I was exaggerating for effect. After the tour, his team scattered looking for lunch. Most came back with grocery store sandwiches. One group found a doner kebab place run by Turkish immigrants who thought the Austrian vacation culture was also ridiculous. The executive asked if I could recommend a better month for corporate retreats. I said literally any other month. He asked if this was a Vienna-specific problem. I told him it was a Europe-wide feature, not a bug. He left me a 3-star review, saying the tour was good, but the city was suspiciously quiet. I replied that Vienna was sleeping. You've just seen how one cultural blind spot can ripple across an entire continent. I break down stories like this every week, with the same depth, the same precision. Subscribing doesn't help me. It helps you never miss the next decode. Somewhere right now, another American is confidently scheduling important meetings for mid-August and wondering why Europeans aren't responding to their emails.